with type 1 developing as an adult, it's very hard to control. I did my best. My doctors did their best. We worked and worked and worked at it. But at a couple years before I got sick, it really got very hard. My husband would wake me up in the middle of the night because he could tell that my blood sugar was very low. I was not going to wake up.
Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Y'all already know what time it is. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. Whenever you are listening to this episode, I just want to come by and say hello and welcome to Stories of Hope podcast. Now, I know I said it. Happy Tuesday. And for a lot of y'all, it's Taco Tuesday. Ooh, ooh. That's my favorite part, if you haven't guessed it by now. But here at Mid-South Transplant Foundation, we call it Tell Your Story Tuesdays. So before we get started, I would like to introduce myself. So if this is your first time tuning in, welcome. I'm happy to have you with us on today. And hello. My name is ARTavius and I am your host and the digital communications coordinator here at Mid-South Transplant Foundation. Now, there's a couple fun facts about me. I am a 16-year post-kidney transplant recipient, and I am the author of Becoming a Living Testimony, My Journey Through Kidney Disease, and How It Blessed My Life. Okay? So are you guys excited for today's episode? Because you know me. You know, I'm always excited to hear somebody's story. So without any further ado, I cannot wait to introduce you to this special guest we have on today. She is a kidney and pancreas recipient. Okay, I'm ready. So would you all help me welcome Miss Sara Beth Silverman? How you doing, Sara?
I'm great. Thank you so
Hey,
much. Glad to be
great.
here.
Yes, I'm so happy to have you here. So, before we get into your story, could you do me a favor and tell us a little bit about yourself for those who may not know you?
Happy to. As Tate said, I'm Sara Beth Silverman. I live in Memphis. I'm 64 years old. I'm married. I have a wonderful husband, two sons, wonderful daughter-in-law, two wild and crazy grandsons. And I am retired. I retired, which you will hear as I tell my story. But it was a wonderful job. I loved it and worked in hospitality all my life
All right.
for a couple of companies here in Memphis. And I spend my time now with my family and traveling when we're able to, hopefully again soon. And I love to read and I love to volunteer with Mid-South Transplant
All
and
right.
a couple of other places as well.
Yes. Well, also, she's one of our amazing ambassadors. So I'm super excited to have you with us on today. So, without further ado, like I say every time, you have the floor. Tell us your story.
So my journey started at about 57 years of age, so roughly 7 years ago. I had been diabetic for 20 years, and they had trouble diagnosing the type of diabetes because I had the symptoms of type 1, but that used to be called juvenile diabetes. So at 37, it's not normal to get type 1. So they really didn't know what to do with me, and it took a long time to figure out how to treat me. But I did end up on several kinds of insulin. Much later in my journey, they came up, the doctors developed a term for it, which is LADA, LADA. I have to look at it. Late onset autoimmune diabetes in adults,
All
which is
right. Okay.
but that will be telling again in a minute. But anyway, with type 1 developing as an adult, it's very hard to control. I did my best. My doctors did their best. We worked and worked and worked at it. But at a couple years before I got sick, it really got very hard. My husband would wake me up in the middle of the night because he could tell that my blood sugar was very low. I was not going to wake up. So he did that every few months. I can tell when I'm awake, or could tell when I was awake. So he got afraid to travel for business and other things. My younger son graduated from college and moved home, did not realize why he was hanging out at home. But turns out he moved out as soon as I recovered from my transplant. He was here watching that over me. But I developed swollen ankles.
Okay.
You go to a different doctor for swollen ankles. I went to my primary care, and he said, "You're in end-stage renal failure." So not what I expected from swollen ankles,
Right.
especially having seen, my regular doctors along the journey. And, that began a long, long process. Any of you that are listening, and I know Tay knows as well, once you reach that point, you're facing dialysis, you're facing, maybe getting on the transplant list. So it became an information overload for me. I'm not one to hide from a problem. I face it head on. To me, information is important for me to make decisions and for me to do the right thing. And I was a project manager most of my life, so I was going to manage my way through this as well. So I asked tons and tons of questions as I went from doctor to doctor. I went to a nephrologist for the first time. And they sent me off to the Methodist Le Bonheur Transplant Clinic here in Memphis, which is the one that does kidneys. So, they bombard you with information. They're wonderful. They answer all your questions, but it is so much to take in. No dinging them. They did a lovely job, but I was very overwhelmed. But what I tried to do was avoid dialysis as long as possible. And that meant going on a renal diet, which means you really can't eat a whole lot of anything.
Ooh,
Yeah,
I call it, you might as well just eat the box.
exactly. But I'm sure it's bad for you too.
Right. It's a very, very strict diet for those who have been on it. It's a crazy diet. But
And
yeah.
I just looked at them and I thought, I am never eating out again. But we find a way. We find those wonderful chefs and people in restaurants who will take those special orders, and as soon as you see it or taste it, whether they have followed it, and they are all wonderful. Kudos to Memphis restaurants.
Yes.
But I did retire after a few months of working with the transplant clinic because you have to go through a lot of tests. A lot of tests. I carried a notebook around with me so that we didn't repeat any of them. And anything I'd had done before I showed up there. And I mean, it was months and months of many, many, many doctor's appointments. And so I talked to my company and I retired so that I could focus on me and staying as healthy as I was and getting to the next step. I also started working out with a trainer so that I would be as healthy as
All
possible
right.
when the time came. So 2.5 doing all that, trying to keep my blood pressure low, trying to keep my kidney numbers happy, and doing all those curls and all of that.
Right.
And going through the listing process was a black hole. Again, nothing against the transplant clinic because they don't know how long you're going to be on the list. They have committees they have to answer to get you on the list. I went through many appointments, lots of grilling questions. And when they were getting ready to send me to my name to committee, you don't get to go. I said, well, why am I not getting a pancreas? I've been reading, and they said, because your pancreas still works. And I said, no, it doesn't. I've been told for 15 of my 20 years of diabetes, it doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, we would have run a test. And so they start through my records, and the test had not been run. So they ran the test that day, but they went to committee and got me approved for a kidney. Then they called me back in and said, why do you want a pancreas? And I said, because so that I wouldn't continue to yo-yo up and down with blood sugar, because I would, my husband would wake me up and it would be 30, or after a meal plus all of my insulin, it could bounce up to at 300 in the blink of an eye. And that would damage a new gift of a kidney as well. And that did not seem right. So then they said, you're too old. Again, I was 57 at the time. I thought, I'm not too old, and I'm in great shape. I work out every day, and I've been eating this crazy diet for a year and a half, and so I was fighting my battles. And they said, well, it's harder to recover. You're going to be in the hospital longer. You'll probably be in the hospital twice. I said, don't care, as long as I come out the other end, doing well. So they asked me, and it threw me off, why did I want this? And, what are the reasons I wanted to live? Which is crazy when you're busy talking about health and everything. So I thought about it on my way home, and I called my coordinator and filled up her voicemail with, the reasons. So she said it was the longest committee meeting. They went back the next day, but I got approved.
All right.
I was on the list for a kidney and a pancreas. So then you move to a new coordinator, the on the list coordinator. So then I called her and I said, tell me what it means. I don't understand. And I said, I go visit my parents every month. They were in their late 80s, and it was a 5-hour drive. I don't want to miss the call.
Right.
Because I'm 5 hours away, but I don't want to not go. So she decided I could probably make it home with a 5-hour drive. So I drew a circle around Memphis 5 hours, and I never left that 5-hour radius while I was on the list. I turned down family weddings, and because they were further away. And
that's what I call dedication.
I didn't know how many shots I would have at my pair of organs. Because again, getting a pancreas means you aren't getting a living donor. You need a deceased donor. So that went on, and I said, okay, when do I need to come in? And she said, well, if you haven't heard from us in a year, come in for blood work. I said, okay, that's not going to work for me.
That's right. Like, wait, what?
So every 2 weeks I called her, and I said, I'm just checking in. And I said, I know you can't tell me a whole lot, but people moved off the list.
Right, tell me something.
Yes. And so she would say, well, we've done, one, or we've added 2 or 3 people to the list. And, I never knew where I was because they don't know where I am on the list.
Right.
But that satisfied my need for,
your sanity.
Knowledge. Knowledge.
Right. Yeah.
So I went on that way for just 6 months. And then my doctor said, you've got to start dialysis. So by then they deemed me too sick to start dialysis on my own, because I was going to do the peritoneal, which was at home.
Yeah.
And so they got my machine, but they made me come in every day and sit in an office, and they would, because I hadn't been trained. So I did that for 5 days, 1 week. And then the next Monday after the weekend was going to be my first day of training. And Sunday was Mother's Day. And it was the first day I'd eaten not renal diet food. Like, yes, I'm celebrating. Monday morning, before I was awake, I got the call. So I never, ever had to do dialysis at home. I did do it in the office. I had my 78 boxes of supplies.
Right. It's a lot of boxes of stuff you have to have.
It is. And it filled up a whole room. But they called and they said, are you on dialysis? And I said, well, sort of.
Right.
And
Yeah,
she said, can you bring your stuff with you? And I said, no, because I have 78 boxes and I don't know what's what. I haven't started training. So I said, here's my dialysis person's mobile number. So she woke her up and called me back and said, just come, forget all that stuff.
Just come on in.
Exactly. She said, how soon can you be there? I was like, 20 minutes, which was overly optimistic since I live 20 minutes from there. But we moved very quickly to get there. So I was probably there by 7:30 in the morning. I got my transplant started at like 10:30 that night.
So you had a night transplant.
I did. So they had, the first requirement was I had to have a heart cath because they could not do it because my kidneys were still functioning enough and the dye of the heart cath would have stopped them. So they said, when you start dialysis, then we'll do the heart cath because, we're not protecting your kidneys anymore. So it was on my Monday list to call and say, okay, I can do my heart cath now. But so that was always the shoe hanging over my head, something hanging over my head. To if I flunked my heart cath, I wasn't going to get the organs.
Right.
And I wasn't going to know it till I got there. And my father had a quadruple bypass at 70. So I'm thinking, please don't let me have his heart genes. I'd already passed the stress test and all of that, and everything else had looked good, but I knew that was hanging over me. But anyway, I did that, and they don't tell you anything about your donor other than they did finally tell me the person was not in town. So that was a great deal of the day was waiting on that. They kept me busy. And they had to do dialysis to make sure I was as good of shape as possible before they started. But yes, I started my surgery late in the evening, but I woke up, I think like 2 days later is the first thing I remember. I know I woke up in between, but I don't remember.
Right. But I remember the 2 days later one. That's the one I remember.
2 days later, I could recognize people and respond. But I fulfilled their projections. Yes, I was in the hospital for 12 days.
That's about the same as me. Okay.
And yes, I had multiple hospital stays. I had 3 surgeries, 3 hospital stays, but not all of them in the same. I had 2 surgeries before I went home the first time.
Okay.
And then another one, and then a fever that just wouldn't go away, and they wouldn't let me go home again. So they were right to say I was going to be battling, but I fought. And so when I finally got home after the last hospital stay, I could again begin to recover because I'd come home and then go back and come home and go back. So I am happy and healthy and have not had any trouble after 5.5 years.
That's great.
Yeah, it's just been such an amazing blessing too.
Yes, so happy for you.
And I'm so thankful. So I'm paying it forward.
Yes, and thank you for that, for amazing story. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we will be right back. So stay tuned.
Thank you.
I give hope, I give life, I give me. Join us and give life.
4 years ago, someone gave me hope and gave me life by giving me a heart.
"25 years ago, someone gave me hope and gave me life. I received a liver that saved my life.
I support organ and tissue donation because 4,000 people in the Mid-South need a life-saving organ.
I can give them hope. I can give them life. I can give me.
You can give life too.
Currently, 4,000 Mid-Southerners are in need of a life-saving transplant. Join Mid-South Transplant Foundation and give hope, give life.
Register to become an organ and tissue donor at midsouhtransplant.org.
All right, we're back with the star, Miss Sara Beth. Did you see you in the commercial?
Yeah, it's been a while since I saw that.
I love it. So we just coming back from Miss Sara Beth and her amazing story, who is a kidney and pancreas transplant recipient. First of all, so was it a couple days, or was the day after Mother's Day? You said you got your transplant?
The day after.
Yes. What a anniversary, huh? So that's
Yeah.
2 days you can celebrate. Mother's Day and the next day is another. Yes, love it.
Well, Mother's Day moves around, but we call mine the transplant anniversary.
Yes. Love it. So you told me you went on dialysis for about it was about a week, you said?
Mm-hmm.
So, oh, how amazing is that?
I was, I use the word lucky.
Yeah.
Oh my God, a lot of people,
Right.
lucky. I was lucky.
Yeah,
Both
so now
dialysis and my gift.
yes, exactly. So now that you've had your transplant, both your transplants, what have you been able to do now that you couldn't do before?
Travel further than 5 hours.
Right, you can go out of that radius now.
Yes, we've had some fantastic trips. My husband and I, he retired. He was still working when I was off having all the surgeries and things. And, he was a trooper. He would spend a lot in the hospital and make a lot of business calls from there, as well as, go back to his office, and his job was to bring me something edible.
Right. Don't come back unless you got me something to eat.
Exactly. But my parents were in their late 80s, and I got to spend the last 5 years of their life with them,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which was
that's
important.
Yeah, definitely was.
But now I have fun with family and travel. I read, and a fun fact, only because it was so unexpected, was we were hiking in the Rockies in Glacier National Park the summer before the pandemic. Everything is either pre or post,
Right.
So June, I guess, and it started hailing, and we were running for our car, and somebody yelled, "Yay, donate life!" And I'm like, how did they know? But
Right.
I had a baseball cap that said "Donate Life" on it,
Okay.
and I turned. I was like, "Yes." Yeah, I wish I could have stopped and said, what made them focus on that hat, but it was hailing, and everybody
Right.
had to take cover. So you never know where you are and where you're going to find some kindred spirit
Right.
through some moment of their lives as well.
Yeah, and it's very, very important for us to talk about that, because I know one thing for me is how important it is for us to share our stories, and how magical it could be, like for that person to just saw your baseball cap and giving you a kudos. Like it'd be the smallest things that really, lifts your spirit. And I wanted to ask you, what for us as recipients now, why do you think it's important for us to share, our stories?
I think one of the things I struggled with, and did not know about Mid-South Transplant at the time, I knew no one who had ever had a transplant.
Mm-hmm.
I knew no one to talk to. I was so overwhelmed by the transplant clinic that I'm sure they have resources, but it was just information overload at the moment. And so for people to find what you're doing online or find Mid-South Transplant itself or other resources and know that there are stories that they can learn from and feel like there's someone else that's journeying through it
Mm-hmm.
and have had such successes.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's just great to get the people to check the boxes and understand how many people are out there waiting
Yeah.
and, what they can do for their fellow humans.
Yeah, for
When
sure. And
they need
for
'em.
me, it's like it's very important to me. And I think also along your journey, if you like on dialysis or if you're a new recipient, I think it's very important to have a tribe, which I call like-minded people around you during that process. Because for me, I had my mom, and that was the only person we are the only two in my family who dealt with kidney disease or dialysis. So it was like I didn't know anybody. So I was like, how, who, and what, and why. So it was crazy, but I understand along your journey, it even though we go through a lot of stuff, whether that's pre-transplant or post-transplant, um your individual story is very important and needed, because even though you and I both went through dialysis, our experiences was completely different. So even though somebody may not be able to relate to my story, they may be able to relate to yours. So I'm
That's
like,
true.
okay, yeah. So the more variety of stories we can get, I feel the more we'll be able to reach that person. So I think it's very important. Thank you for that. I love that. And like you was mentioning with those who aren't registered and how they can help, help within the community. So I would like to, I hate we have to close it because we're getting close to the time, but I love talking with you. But before we go, for the final question, for that person or those people who are on the fence about becoming a registered organ and tissue donor, what would you say to them?
Um, it's hard to put it into words, but there are just so many people who could benefit when you no longer need your organs. They could benefit, and you can save lives, so many lives by just checking that one box.
Mhm.
Um, we were just in Knoxville, and I saw a car with the back window with lettering in it, and it said, "My dad is in need of a kidney." And
Mhm.
then it said O positive, and it had a phone number and a URL. So I looked up the URL after I stalked the car and met the young lady who was driving it, and she said her dad uh, was close to the top of the list now and hopefully would get a kidney soon. But I looked at the URL. He and both of his brothers have polycystic kidney disease, PKD.
Mhm. Mhm.
3 people in one family, and
Wow.
2 of the brothers have gotten kidney transplants, and her dad was waiting on his. And one of them waited 9 years, and one of them waited 5 years, and he's been waiting 4 years. And, those people could be saved and have such a shorter wait with people checking their boxes
Mhm.
with their 2 kidneys. So that to me is just an example of you know lives you can change in a you know in the
Yeah.
moment of checking your box.
Right, right. Well, there you have it, guys. Thank you so much, Miss Sarah Beth. That is the time we have for today's episode. I really, really hope and pray that your story was able to reach someone and to encourage them to become a registered organ and tissue donor. Again, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so happy to have you and to see your beautiful face again. It's been so long since I've
No.
seen you in person. So hopefully in the coming weeks, and I ain't gonna say months, in the coming weeks, we can get to see each other face to face, and I can get a good old hug from you.
That would be
But
great.
yes. So for those of you who are watching us live on YouTube, be sure you give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave us a comment below. Let us know what you think of this episode and what did you take from this episode as well. If you are listening via podcast platforms, don't forget to subscribe so you will be sure to get the notification every time we drop a new episode. Leave us a 5-star rating and a comment as well. Let us know what you took away from this episode. And if you are in the tri-state area, that is Tennessee, Mississippi, or Arkansas, to sign up to become a registered organ and tissue donor, you can visit our website at midsouhtransplant.org. And if you are in any of the other states, you can go to registerme.org and you can fill out the form and select the state that you are in. All right. So before I go, I got to tell you, no matter the opinions of others or whatever adversity you may face in your life, always believe in yourself, because I know I believe in you. You guys take care. Have a great rest of your week. And until next Tuesday, I will see you guys right back here on Stories of Hope. Take care.